isn't it sometimes like say for like small families, like say it was like only like me, my mom, like my brother, like if she had debt and like she passed away with that debt from our debt?
Depends on how old you are. Okay. And it's just her, right? She's a single mom, correct?
Yeah.
Single mom?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not gonna lie, I don't know 100%, but I want to say, and
No, she doesn't. But I was just saying, like.
I want to say that I think eventually it would be your
Yeah.
debt. But there are probably like clauses and insurance stuff that would be able to pay for it. So let's say she has a life insurance policy. So if she passed away, you get $400,000. That should be something you should probably, don't think about that, all right? That's messed up, but people do that all the time. But that's probably something that you could, pay with some of that, pay some of her debt off. But sometimes they'll wipe that clean if you're that young. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just depends. Ariel, what you have a
Well,
question?
if you have like medical bills that you don't pay, will they take it out of your tax check and stuff?
Yeah, so they dock your credit. So medical bills deal directly with your credit too. So your credit will go down. Say you have a 730 credit, which is good, pretty good. It'll keep going down and keep going down and keep going down because you're not paying on your medical bills. And then eventually they'll send that to a collection agency. See, the whole deal is like MGH, say you got bills from MGH, Marion General Hospital, or whatever it's called now, Marion Health. They will eventually, if you quit paying after a year, they'll send it to a collection agency because they don't want to deal with it. The collection agency will keep building up interest and keep bugging you, right? You'll keep getting those 888 calls or 800 or whatever it is, right? And it really hurts your credit. It'll hurt you eventually in the long run. You just keep racking up debt, right? Antoine, what was your question?
But when you in college, then you get a job and pay it off, like whatever you make to take in college.
You can pay college out of pocket.
No, I'm saying, if you go into school and you owe already,
Yeah.
and you get like a college
A job after college.
No, on campus job.
Ooh, I don't think so. I think no matter how, if you borrow money from the school as like a federal loan, you got to pay that back.
No, I'm saying like, what can't you like from the money you making at like the hours that you working in college, right?
Yeah.
Campus job.
Yeah.
But they take the check and put it to a school, right? Can you do that?
I've never heard anybody do that. I've heard of people working on campus to maybe get a little more money, but most of it is your money. So if they want to put that toward, school living, whatever, you could do that. But they're going to pay you a check. I used to work for a catering company through Indiana State, right? And they just gave you a check like a regular job. You know what I mean? And you can use that, right? But now there is work-study program. Is that what you're talking about? Work-study? So that means like, basically you get a job at the library or something like that, okay? And you may get like less tuition, right? You may not have to pay as much because you work for the campus, but you still got to pay. You're still going to have to pay quite a bit of money for that, okay? Any more questions about that? Okay, so personal debt is very good. Now the exit ticket, right? That one of them is going to be, is it good or bad? Okay, we've talked about this before. What are ways that going in debt can help you?
If you paid off the bill,
Yeah. So a good way is you've got to have some kind of debt, but you got to pay it off, right? And then or pay on it. I'm not going to say pay it off, right? It's your car payment. So if you have a car payment of $200 a month, right? As long as you pay that every time, and remember, right? I paid a lot of money for my car, right? Which was like $15,000. I paid a lot of money, a down payment on there. My car payment's only $100 even, right? So the more money you pay on a down payment for a car, the less your car payment will be. If you just pay the whatever 5%, 10% of a car payment, your car payment's gonna be a lot more, okay? And that's for people that may have just cash sitting around, right? That are able to do that. But if you pay that every month and you're on time, it will build your credit massively. A credit card, right? If you get a credit card from your credit union, right? Let's say you got a $2,000 max, but we talked about this last week, Mr. Bryan here. Let's say you only use it on your phone bill, right? So you go into debt technically $50 a month, but you pay it off, right? Every month. That's going to build your credit every time, okay? And then what obviously is the bad way for personal debt? What's the bad thing about it?
You're in debt.
You're in debt and you get worse. Your credit goes down, right? Your credit score goes down. You get in a deeper debt, and like I said, everyone is in big trouble, okay, when you get those debt collectors, right? Come on, guys, sit down. debt collector agencies are your worst enemy. Okay? And there's different ways. Like have you heard of the Kohl's credit card? Have you heard of those
Yeah.
things? Right? All of that. Now I use one, but what I do is I'll get it and I'll pay it right there because it's kind of like a cheat code. So they say, because you get like the clothes I would get if you were to get $200 worth of clothes at Kohl's, it'd only be $150 if you get a credit card there. So I use the credit card, right? I sign up, use it, pay the cash there, right? So I'm back at zero.
So, like store credit cards, you don't have to pay the full amount like
No.
a regular credit card?
When I was younger, I got a Best Buy credit card, okay? Maxed it out, right? Got a Xbox One at the time was when it first came out. I got a flat screen TV. I got a game, I got controllers. I think I got something else too, right? So I pretty much maxed it out. And then I eventually paid it, right? Slowly. It was very close to going to collections. But yes, you can do that. And what you do, like what my brother used to do is he would go to, Kohl's, Best Buy, places like that. What he would do is he would get the credit card, right, use it, and then when he would get paid or whatever he would use that money at the end of the month, he would just pay it off, right? Pay it off in one big payment, right? So if he spent $300 at the end of the month, he would put that. But that's where you have a problem, Ariel, is if you go to all these stores and you visit, and what they do is they ask for your address, social security number, they ask for your income, right? You can obviously lie about it, but they ask for that, and then they give you you can have $2,000 on this card, or you can have $4,000, right? You can go to the store, swipe that card, and get whatever you want. But what happens if you keep going to places and doing that?
Not paying back.
Yeah, eventually you have $10,000 in debt, and you're like, oh my God, I can't pay this back. I only make, $1,000 a month, right? If I have a crappy job, okay? So remember, debt is good at sometimes, but it can be miserable. And there's nothing, and I'm telling you guys, like, that's adult problems, right? It makes you sick to your stomach when you know, like, oh my gosh, I can't pay my debt back, And it's different when you borrow money from a family member or something like that. I'm the type of person, I've only had to borrow money one time in my entire life. I borrowed from my mom and dad. And that was it. I never like owing money. I think that's it's just something in me that if I owe somebody money, I've got to pay them back, right? Some people don't care. Some people do not care. They're like, whatever. And I know you know them because they might be like, give me $1 every day. Give me $2 every day. And then they never pay you back, right? And that's the biggest thing that bums me. Now, it is a little different when you're married, right? When you're married. Because remember, some people have different ways when we talk about when you're married. Is that you? Do you ask for $1 every day of somebody?
No.
But when you're in relationships, what are you going to say? Okay. So it's different when you're married or in a relationship. Remember, you guys don't have to get married. You can still be life partners, whatever it is now. But let's say one makes more money than you, but you have one joint account. How do you deal with that, right? How do you feel about that? How do you feel if the other person's spending money on necessities, right? Maybe food for themselves, gas, whatever, but you know that you're putting more money into that account.
Then you drop it to whatever they're paying in there, and you put it in the same.
See?
I
But
feel like in marriage, you need to have like no matter what the thing is, like if y'all get paid like equally, or one gets paid more than the other, y'all still need to come up with a budget. Like, okay,
yeah, this is what you do, and that's what most do. Most do that. Or some do separate accounts, right? But they have a joint account and a separate account. And the joint account, you each put a certain amount of your check in there. That's it. You have your separate accounts to have fun with, whatever you want to do. Yeah.
So when you get divorced, do they get some amount of prenup sign? No, I'm saying like if you don't sign a prenup and like you got a separate account, they get money out of that too if they like win.
If you don't have a prenup,
Yeah,
so
like
a prenuptial agreement only matters when it's one person wants to divorce the other, right?
No, I'm saying like, all right, say if y'all get married, you don't sign a prenup, but when y'all get divorced, like they want something, do they get to take money out like your separate account?
Dude, if you don't sign a prenup, that person gets half. They are allowed to get half.
So the prenup protects
The
you.
prenup protects a person with money from the person getting 50%, okay, of everything. And that's why people that have a prenup are really people that are worth millions and billions of dollars and have all kinds of intangibles, right? Houses, properties, boats, cars, all that stuff. But that's where it becomes a problem, though, is when, and you see this all the time in Hollywood, when somebody doesn't have a prenup, they're gonna get 50%. Especially if that person is in the wrong. Yes.
So, prenup, does that account for everything that other person makes?
Everything, every intangible,
Even after
all
you're
their income,
Yeah, even after you're together?
even after. She gets 50% the rest of her life.
Well, no, I mean.
Or him. I bet it could be a guy too. What?
I mean, if you get a prenup.
If you have a prenup, no, that means she can't get nothing. She goes in with what she had or he had, right? It just depends. Yeah. Ariel.
So if you're married and you guys get a joint account and then you divorce, how does the money separate? Like, do you get half of
That's
that?
why you have attorneys and you have an agreement, right? So you got to come up with that.
That's
Right,
why I
so
like
I'll tell you personally how we handled it, right? Is I knew the money that I always put in there, so I just got that and I gave her everything. I said you can have the house. I helped her a little bit with her car payment, but not that much. I said you have your car, I'll take a few toys for the kids. I just cared about the custody of the kids. That's it. You can have the house, you can have all the intangibles, all the couches, right? She was trying to give me stuff, right? I took a bed, right? All those kind of things you have to work out.
Real
So y'all-
And real
Does
things.
your
Like, should be able to, like,
ex-wife still live in the same house?
But yeah, she does. It was a
why
very
don't
nice
they have
house.
divorce?
What?
Why don't they have divorce?
Don't ask you that question.
But you a real stand up.
Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, some people just go through that, right? And it's different now, you guys. This isn't back in the 70s and 80s where people just, stay together because of it, because of the kids. Everyone wants their own type of life. So I'm kind of glad that we did at the time. I didn't want to, but now I'm very glad that we did.
Alright, I got one person. Did she keep your last name?
Ooh, she has it on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Okay.
She kept it on LinkedIn. That's like for your career. So like once you get a certain career, you use LinkedIn. People can see your resume. They can see where you're working. So say if you're looking for a job, people
So
use
it's
LinkedIn.
still stable.
Huh?
No, she still got his last name.
Yeah. I don't think she legally changed it. She might have. I don't know, but it's.
Wait, so you guys can be like not legally married, but she can still have your last name?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it. You can legally change your name to whatever you want.
Yeah.
Or you can
Yeah.
legally change your name to Purdue. Right now. If you're 18, you can legally change your name to anything. But when you're married, you can either hyphenate it, not change it, or change your last name. And she did that when we got married. Legally changed her name. So then the process to do that to when you divorce, right, is a whole other process to legally change your name back to what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, my cousin, his ex-wife now, so he's his name, he's already married to that woman.
Some people just do that to make it easy. Because think about it, if you're married for 20 years and you have the same last name, people don't want to go back and change that.
It's weird though. I think it's
Yeah.
weird.
It is weird, right? It is
Feel
weird.
like, in this generation, if I ever get married, I'm keeping everything neat. Cause you never know what's gonna happen.
Hyphenate it,
What's
yeah.
your name on that one?
And you don't have to change your name. You don't have to do that.
But I feel like it's like respecting, like if
It
you're getting
is.
married to somebody, like
Yeah.
of course you're gonna wanna.
And then you think about the kids, right? If you have kids, like what are you gonna do?
You want a big family.
Exactly. You want to keep the name.
Yeah, I don't know if I want
kids.
You want to keep the name. Hey, don't say that. We need population growth. Okay.
Nah.
I think we're populated.
Yeah, we qualify.
We're not. We're underpopulated. People have less kids. Yes.
So
I'm like, you said population, you got left and
I'm
right.
talking about my life be fun when I get older if I know how to get it.
Yeah. like-
Okay. The next thing I want to talk about really quick is federal debt. Federal debt. Have you guys ever heard of federal debt?
No.
Federal debt? Okay. So federal debt is a little bit different. All right, I want somebody to guess right now before I put this debt clock up. What do you think our national federal debt is right now? More than that, bro. Huh? 3.6 trillion? More than that. Okay?
Like 7.
I love showing this. Okay, here is the debt clock. Okay? Our U.S. national debt is 31 trillion as of right now. And look, it is constantly going up. This is debtclock.org. Okay, so you can use all of this. All
I
right.
thought Marion was broke. The whole
Look at our federal. This is the official federal spending. The federal government officially spends 6 trillion. Okay, that's our budget deficit. All right. Hey, here's the state debt. Right, we're at $1 trillion. This is the debt per citizen. Okay.
That's
Debt
it?
per citizen. Some people, you gotta understand, some people owe 0. Some people owe 30,000. Some people owe a little bit. That's averaged out. Okay. And then this is what I gotta find it. Here we go. This is what I love to show down here. I think this is hilarious. Okay. Here is the U.S. population as of now, and you'll see it'll probably change. It will probably change. Here's the U.S. population. These are obviously, I'm guessing, people that are probably have a Social Security number, right? 334 million, yeah. So 3 billion, 60, yeah. And then this number will eventually change. 64, boom, a baby was born. There you go. Another person is a citizen, right?
Is it kind of crazy to you to think like we're all just a number?
It's messed up.
Like,
Right. It's really bad. But the big thing I'll talk about national debt, and you guys later this week, I don't know about tomorrow, maybe Thursday or Friday, you will have your last, I think this is going to be your last actual quiz. Okay? And it's over debt. Now, it's multiple choice, and I promise you, we will do a Kahoot. Okay? You'll do a Kahoot the day before, and it'll be the same questions. Okay? So it will be easy. All right? But this is something that I love to show because I think it's crazy. But you got to understand the national debt. This is the biggest talk about who's in office and what, right? Do we expand our national debt more? Do we pay it on? There's no way we'll ever cover that national debt. Okay. So my thought is, why don't we just keep raising it up, right? Who's going to pay for it? Nobody.
I mean, what if you take all the millionaires and billionaires and have them give a little piece of it together?
Do you think they're going to give a piece of their pie? Heck no.
I
They're not gonna
would.
do anything.
like they be the most stingy. Y'all got so much skin.
They're not giving any of that money.
But they work for it though, so like,
Shit, I work for mine.
But here's the U.S. total debt. Here's the U.S. total debt. 95 billion. Okay.
but do you think we could pay that national debt off if we did was to take every billionaire and have them do that? Like at least like.
I don't think so, man. I really
My
don't
thing
think
is like
so.
you can't really be in debt because we're never like
Hey, it's a
we're never gonna pay it off. So it might as well just not be there. Do you see 31 trillion?
No, our national debt, yeah, that's something that we can. That's something that there's different ways, and we'll talk about that here in a second. You'll probably see watching the crash course video real quick.
It is literally just.
But sometimes, the ways you can at least cover a little bit is just raising taxes, raising rates again, right? All those kinds of things that'll make you mad, right? So, okay, we're gonna watch this crash course video really quick, all right? And then you love crash course. You gotta love them. They're good.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Hill.
And I'm Jacob Clifford, and welcome to Crash Course Economics.
What's wrong with you?
Today we're talking about deficits and debt. You've probably heard a lot about the national debt. So what is it, and where does it come from, and is it a problem? And most importantly, should you even care? First off, deficit and debt are not the same thing. A budget deficit is when the government spends more than it brings in tax revenue in a given year. Then it has to borrow money to cover that year's shortfall. The debt is the accumulation of budget deficits. For example, let's start a country called, Cliffordonia. It's pretty cool name. In its first year, the Cliffordonian government brings in $400 of tax revenue, and it spends $500 because starting a new country is kind of expensive. So in that year, the deficit is $100. Then the next year, it brings in $600 of tax revenue, but spends $800. That year's deficit is $200. To calculate Cliffordonia's debt, add up all those yearly deficits. So at the end of the second year, it has a debt of $300. $100 from the first year and $200 from the second year. Things are looking pretty tough for Cliffordonia. Not only is the nation in debt, but it also has an average tax revenue of only $500 a year. It's going to be difficult getting that space program off the ground at that rate.
Let's leave the plight of Cliffordonia behind for a moment and talk about the real world. Specifically, let's talk about the United States, since it has the largest debt. Hooray! America #1! So how big is the debt right now? 18 trillion, 236 million, 176 million, 274,963. No wait, 18 trillion, 236 billion, 176 million, 288,000.
Look how much our debt went up.
But it's a little over
Like I said, that was like 2012 or 13, maybe 14, 15. Look how much it went up in 8 years, though. It was only 18 trillion. Okay, it's gotten way
That was 2
worse.
years, it almost doubled.
That was bad. Okay.
$16 trillion. The number sounds really, really high. I have a hard enough time wrapping my head around billions and billions, not to mention trillions. The debt seems especially high when you look at the trend over time. First, we need to adjust that trend for inflation because dollars today are not the same as dollars in the past. Remember, we try to keep it real around here. Second, we really should be looking at debt as a percent of GDP. Why? Well, suppose I owe $200 and a 6-year-old owes $100. Which of us will have a harder time paying it off? Well, probably the 6-year-old, because even though my actual debt number is larger, I have a job. I have 2 jobs. What's your allowance, you unemployed 6-year-old? In the same way, our GDP grows every year due to population growth and productivity increases, and our ability to sustain debt grows along with our income. So here is the U.S. federal government debt as a percent of GDP. As you can see, it's risen over the past several years. So is that a bad thing?
Well, there's a couple ways to look at it. First, compare the U.S. to other developed nations. The U.S. has a higher debt to GDP than other countries, but several other countries have a much higher ratio. Some of these are in crisis, like Greece and Italy, but there are also other countries that are stable, like Japan and France, that have much higher levels of debt than the U.S. Second, most economists aren't concerned about the borrowing the U.S. has done already, because they're too worried about the borrowing they're going to do. A lot of politicians and pundits have freaked out about this, while economists are focused on this.
All right, what we need to figure out is what's driving those huge deficits in coming decades. Deficits are the difference between federal spending and revenue. So let's look at those as a percent of GDP. The problem isn't a drop off in tax revenue. What economists are worried about is spending. So let's look at where the government actually spends its money. Conservatives might complain, it's obvious handouts. Liberals will say, it's obvious defense. Well, they're both wrong. So who's the biggest recipient of federal dollars? Grandma and grandpa. The government spends about a quarter of the budget on Social Security and another quarter on healthcare programs. A lot of that goes to retired people on Medicare. They deserve it. They worked hard. And those are the programs that are expected to grow as baby boomers retire and live longer. Defense and other discretionary programs are actually projected to shrink slightly as a percent of GDP. We'll be making another video on these specific topics later because we love making videos. But one thing's for sure, U.S. policymakers will be forced to make some hard decisions about these future unfunded liabilities.
So the answer is obviously just to keep borrowing more and more money, right? Not necessarily. Good luck, Papa. First, to borrow, you need lenders, people who've decided to save money and loan it out rather than spend it on something else. But there's a finite amount of money that savers can lend, and most of that savings is borrowed by the private sector, which is consumers that take out car loans and businesses that pay for things like factories and computers. And when the government runs a budget deficit, it borrows from that same pool of savings. And if the government continues to borrow, many economists worry that there'll be fewer loans available for businesses, and that'll hurt the long-run growth of the economy. The second worry is the Greece scenario. A country's debt could grow so large that savers, individuals, businesses, and other governments might fear they'll never get paid back. They can stop lending money entirely, or they can lend at higher interest rates. Higher interest rates would make it harder to pay back the loan, which would likely lead to more debt. Eventually, the government would simply be unable to pay its bills. That's called default, and it's basically terrible for everyone. The investors who loan the government money lose billions, and the government loses all credibility, and it causes a massive recession. That's what happened to Greece a few years ago. It's what happened to Argentina in 2001, Russia in 1998, many other countries throughout history.
Thanks, Thought Bubble. Fortunately, the U.S. has something called the debt ceiling, which is a cap on how much debt the U.S. Treasury can issue. The U.S. will never, ever, ever be able to borrow more than the ceiling, so debt can never get out of control. No. Remember, the debt comes from repeated deficits. Deficits come from spending that's higher than revenues. The debt ceiling does nothing to cut spending or raise revenue. It just gets politicians into a big fight every few months. Basically, trying to cut the debt without raising revenue or cutting spending is like trying to lose weight by buying smaller clothes instead of with diet or exercise. It doesn't work. But there is good news for the U.S. First, both American and foreign lenders charge the U.S. government extremely low interest on its loans. That tells us they're confident in the government's ability to pay them back. And the low interest rates actually make it easier for the government to pay. Second, there are signs that the growth in healthcare costs could actually be slowing. Now, it's too early to tell if this is true, but if it is, the long-run budget picture will be much better than what we've shown. In fact, the projections for long-run deficits and debt have already been revised downward. Go us! So is all this debt going to destroy the American way of life? Like most things in economics and a crash course, the answer is complicated, and it depends a lot on what you're looking at as well as your political point of view. Looking at debt from the past or even the present is a good way to have political arguments, but it may not be a great way to think about the future. Right now, healthcare spending is driving the debt higher, but if a massive pandemic kills off half the world or there's a zombie apocalypse, after an initial spike, those healthcare costs are gonna fall. And frankly, in that case, the national debt and deficit spending will be the least of our worries. On that cheery note, we've got to stop.
Okay. So do you guys know what Social Security is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
What's Social Security?
it's a check Quest get every month.
Yeah, right.
It's
Yeah, he's too young for that.
Or the people that can't work.
Well, mainly, okay, it is, yes, a check for elderly people, right, that have worked their entire life, okay? And the federal government, right, gives them that check. What's the problem with Social Security? Do you guys even understand how this works? So
No.
the federal
Not
government
really.
sets a date, right, an age, right, on how old you can be to receive Social Security. Okay.
Is that what it is?
That is part of it. But some people can retire and get a pension before their Social Security. But you want to be able to get your Social Security and retirement, right? That's how people live. The Social Security is not going to be as much as your retirement, right? Your retirement is going to be a lot of money, okay? But I believe, you got to think, my parents right now are in their mid-60s, okay? And they're able to retire. I don't think I'm able to get Social Security until I'm like 73. You guys are going to be possibly 78 or older, right? So that's the problem, is they keep pushing up, right?
Why though?
Well, because people are living longer. That's the main thing. So it used to be you might have gotten your Social Security at 50 back in the day because you may have only been able to live past 60, right? So the more life expectancy and the longer you live, right, they can consider it. That's how they do that, is they feel like, okay, Mason can work until he's 70 now, right? And that's the problem, is the life expectancy, the health care we receive is a little bit better than what it was years ago, okay? So that's the one thing. But here's just a little bit on government spending. Obviously the most was Social Security, Medicare. What's Medicaid? Medicare.
So like when you go to like the hospital or something, they pay for it.
Yeah, the government pays for it, right? You make a certain amount of income, or you don't have to pay for it, or maybe you only get your Social Security. You can pay,
Yeah,
right?
I'm gonna have to get
Same with Medicaid. Now, what's defense?
Huh?
What's defense?
Is that like lawyers?
No.
Bail money.
The military. When we talk about defense, this is what we're spending. And it has gone up drastically because of why this year? What is Biden giving a lot of money to in defense? Yes, but specifically Ukraine, the Ukrainian military, he has given tons of money.
And then we call the war on us.
Could be, but we haven't yet. No. We'll see.
We gonna be dead ourselves.
That's
not
all
gonna
we
be
Trump was back, man. Trump gonna tell the records, hey.
Trump be taking a shit on the toilet and tweet out, if you keep going.
Okay,
we're gonna
and this is the last one. Hold on, this is the last one I want to show. Okay, is you have right. This is a year. So here's the possible right. This would be debt held by the public, right? Hopefully it goes down right in the next 5-10 years from now. Okay, this is in the billions, right? We're way up here. Hopefully it goes down. This is like a projection, but I don't know. Right?
So is the Social Security tax, is that always not like the most money I get taken out of people's checks? Because that's the most money I
Yes.
get taken out of mine.
That's the that's the most the federal government takes out. Yeah, and that's what they use it for, is old people.
Yeah.
So really, people don't mind that Social Security tax, because we're all gonna get it eventually.
Yeah.
So you don't mind it. And plus, most of us have elderly grandparents, right, that receive a Social Security, and some of your grandparents can't work.
My
Okay.
grandma there, that said I'm gonna take care of
Okay, some of my grandma gets them home, right?
it. Every time.
So there's no way she could work. Okay, they work. They did all that. Okay, you guys have a little bit of time left. I want you to do your exit ticket right now. Okay, it is on Google Classroom. Please write a complete sentence. Don't just write a little BS, and don't put it in a private comment, Mason. Okay? Because every time you do that, it messes me up. Make sure it's turned in. Some of you are writing stuff and then it still says missing. right? Make sure it's turned in on Classroom.
What's the sentence?
It's on Google Classroom. Yeah, everything it's on Google Classroom.
So we gotta write the sentence for each one.
You gotta write a sentence, yeah.
No, I'm saying like I know we gotta write our own sentence, but do we gotta write for each question type?
Okay, hold on. Let me help you out. Okay, so let me go to Classroom. So yeah, if we go to period 2, that's ticket 418. Okay, the instructions. Explain why personal debt can be good and bad for your personal finance. We already talked about that. What are your thoughts on our national debt? What are ways we can limit our national debt? Okay, remember on exit tickets you can look things up, whatever. But that's basically what 3 sentences.
Yeah.
And you can do bullets. You can number it. I don't care. That's up to you. You know, or you can just do 3 different sentences. Okay, but you got to be writing out at least a sentence for each one. Okay. And then remember, turn it in.
Probably not.
Do I say that? It's like, why didn't you put in that? Is that you? That anyway.
I'm trying to go to Coachella. Anyone trying to go? Yeah, you gonna say?
I just saw him mention to get them claims done.
So why you looking at me like that, babe? Got something to say, babe?
That shit, you don't say shit. Shut up.
How about here? How about here? Thanks, you don't need to. You say you just tired, that's all. I'm gonna lose.
I'll decide.
And listen, I'm sorry.